some math. What? I'm muted? Am I muted? No, okay. All right, good. It is 8:35 and I would like to get going with some math. If you have your whiteboards handy, we're gonna go ahead and turn that chat off and we are going to do some math. I do like putting the math on the whiteboard here that's handy for me, and I like reviewing what you've already learned so you don't forget. So if you would, please, you can put your camera in speaker view so you can see the whiteboard nice and big. Otherwise, I will tell you the questions and you need to write them down on your whiteboard, show your work, and we'll compare and see if we match answers. All right, so let's kick off with a little review. Oop, there it is, a little review with adding and subtracting decimals. Start off with addition. How about 2.57 plus 7.706? There you go. First review question of the day, a little addition. I give you about a minute and a half to solve each one, or unless I see a whole bunch of whiteboards next to your faces. Oh, yeah, that didn't take long. I'm seeing all those whiteboards. That's great. All right. Hopefully you've got those decimals all lined up. Line up those decimals when you add or subtract. You must line up decimals. Add and subtract. Line up the decimals. All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Show me. I want to see your answers. I'm flipping through really fast. I want to make sure. Aha! Wowzers! Yes, this is fantastic. 10.276 is the correct answer. Very good. All right. Yay. Give yourself a nice pat on the back or a round of applause. Every time you get it right, you need a little tiny mini celebration. Okay, next one, subtraction. I'm going to start with a whole number and say 15 minus 6.108. 15 minus 6.108, or 6 and 108 thousandths. Might take an extra 30 seconds or so. I have to do a lot of regrouping. Okay. There we have it. Ready? Nope, I see somebody's holding up their fingers. Like, wait, 1 more minute. Okay. Not a whole minute, but 10 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see what you got. Yeah, there you go. Ooh. Okay. We got mostly some correct. mostly correct. Some people forgot to put those zeros in the top to regroup. So I am going to rewrite this one and walk through it with you. If you have 15 minus 6.108, remember that decimal goes above the decimal in the top number, and you will have to add some zeros there. You have to plug in some zeros up top before you can subtract. All right, and because they are zeros, you cannot subtract anything from nothing. So you have 0 minus 8. You're going to have to do a whole bunch of regrouping here. This kid doesn't work. You go next door, it's another 0. You can't regroup until you hit the 5. 5 then becomes 4. And that 10 comes next door. This becomes 10. But since you're regrouping, it actually, you're borrowing or regrouping from that, it's a 9. Next door comes a 10 because this 10 comes next door. You go to the next place value, it's a 9. And finally, we have 10 on top. Now you can subtract 10 minus 8 and 9 minus 0 and 9 minus 1. Don't forget that decimal, nice and big and fat. And then 14 minus 6, because if I just take this one away and put it on top to regroup, 14 minus 6 is indeed 8. 8.892. If you got that one correct, give yourself a big pat on the back and do a little shimmy shimmy, because that one is a little more difficult when you have to regroup so many times. Okay, we are going to continue a couple more practice problems before we move on today. The next one is 3.9, and this time we're going to multiply times 0.08. You're multiplying, so you do not have to line up the decimals, but you do have to count how many digits are behind the decimals. Go ahead and solve that. All right, got that multiplication. You got it, Mark? Ready to go? Well, no, don't turn off the camera. I was just making conversation. Mark, turn on that camera. Come on. Don't shy away from me. Let's see your answers. Ready? 1, 2, 3, show me. Okay, there we have it. Yes, you do multiply first, multiply regularly. If you multiply 8 times 39, you would get 312. But because there's 1, 2, 3 digits in your problem, you have 3 digits behind the decimal in your answer. All right, so 0.312. All right, that one looked pretty good. And I'm going to do one more double digit times a double digit. How about 24 times 0.17? Okay, I'll give you a minute and a half to work on that one. Gerald Jones, I sure hope you have an answer ready to rock and roll for us. All right, I'm seeing a couple whiteboards. Double digit takes longer. I know it. There we are, there's a few more. Okay. Very nice. Okay. On the count of 3, let's see what you got. 1, 2, 3, show me. Yes, no, yes, and no, and yes, and then some more yeses. All right. If you multiply 24 times 17, all right, you have 7 times 4 is 28 indeed. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2 more is 16. When you're finished with that 7, don't forget to bring down the 0, okay? And then continue 1 times 4 and 1 times 2. When you add these together, you're going to get, sorry about that. You're going to get 408. I had some people have the right numbers, but then the decimal place happened to be in the wrong spots. Remember, when you multiply, you count how many digits are behind the decimal. Here, the decimal is just in front of the 17. There is no decimal in front of the 24 or in the number 24. So you just count 1, 2 digits behind the decimal and 1, 2 digits behind the decimal in your answer. 4.08. All right, so I think this is refreshing your memories a little bit. And yesterday we started with division and using decimals. So if you clear off your whiteboards, I've got to make room for some division problems for today. All right, make some room there. Get ready for some more division. Yesterday, we took a problem such as 65. I'm going to start off with some small numbers here. 65 divided by 8. And if you weren't here yesterday, I'm just going to refresh your memory as well, or kind of reteach real quick as well. If 8 does not go into 6, I usually put a placeholder above the 6, something to indicate that nothing, 8 does not go into 6 at all. So make sure you don't write any digits, any actual numbers above the 6, unless you're writing a 0 or an X or a placeholder. Okay, 8 does go into 65 8 times, because 8 times 8 is 64. All right, 8 times 8 is 64. That 8 goes above the 5. So make sure your place values are all lined up again. This is very, very important when you're solving division problems. Once you subtract, I have 1 left over. And yesterday we learned that we're not going to just leave 8 remainder 1. That is like a 4th grade thing to do. So in 5th grade and in 6th grade, you are now going to use decimals. And what that might look like is putting a decimal after the 65 and plugging in a 0. Okay, if you plug in a 0, you have to bring it down just like you would regular division, and then ask, how many times does 8 go into 10? Okay, if you have a decimal, make sure you bring it above the division bar, that division line, and you can ask, 8 goes into 10 one time. Okay, 1 times 8 is 8, and when you subtract, you have 2 left over. But guess what? You can add another 0 behind the 65. It doesn't change the fact that you still have 65. So we're going to bring down yet another 0 and ask how many times 8 goes into 20. Well, 8 goes into 20 twice, leaving you 16. 2 times 8 is 16. And we have a remainder here of 4. And since we still have a remainder, we're going to plug in 1 more 0. And I'll give you a tip. In your math books, in Khan Academy, it won't make you add more than 3 zeros. That's the most number of zeros, because we have to learn how to divide decimals out to the thousandth place. So that's 3 zeros. This is my last 0. If it doesn't work, then I messed up. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is exactly 40. And that leaves you with your final answer of 8.125. 8.125, or 8 and 125 thousandths, 3 places after the decimal. All righty, I'm going to give you one now. It's going to be your turn. Okay, I will write it. I want to leave an example up here so you can see it. So I'm just going to write it down here on this little corner of my whiteboard. I want you to solve 2,626 divided by 4. Why don't you try that one? 2,626 divided by 4. Okay, give that one a go. All righty, I'm seeing some whiteboards. Okay, good, good. Thank you, thank you. On the count of 3, I would like to see the answer you're going to show me. 1, 2, 3, show me. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing those decimals in there. Oh, fantastic. Uh-oh, I don't see a placeholder. Ooh, we're going to walk through this one real quick. I'm seeing a lot of correct answers, and I'm seeing one mistake of not filling in quite enough of the answer. So I'm going to zoom back down in here to 4 into 2,626. All right. If I have 4, it does not go into 2. There's nothing there. Don't write anything above the 2. First mistake, because then your numbers get all out of whack. 4 does go into 26, though. 4 goes into 26 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. When you subtract, you have 2 left over. And you bring down the next 2, the next digit to 2. 4 goes into 22 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And you have 2 left over again. Bring down the 6. This one, it's just like the first one here. We had 26 over here. 6 times 4 is 24. Once again. And we have 2 left over. So you have to put the decimal. That's the part where you put the decimal. Bring the decimal above the line. Add a 0 there at the end. I'm squishing mine in here. Bring the 0 down next to the 2. And then you have to ask how many times 4 goes into 20, which is exactly 5 times. So 656.5, 656.5. All right, if you got that one, give me a thumbs up. I'm seeing some, yeah. If you found your mistake, though, this is even more important. If you found your mistake, give me 2 thumbs up. If you found your mistake, that's even more important. All right, there we go. 2 thumbs up that you found the mistake. Good. I'm just gonna take it one step further now, and we are going to continue a little more division. Looks like that's the part that's most difficult. So more division, but I'm going to start off with some smaller numbers such as 14.4 and divide by a single digit 8. 14.4 divided by a single digit of 8. And when you do single digit division, but you have a decimal on the inside, you have to look on the outside. The first rule of dividing with decimals is always look on the outside. As long as you have a whole number on the outside, then all you have to do is find that decimal on the inside and pull it above the line. Voila. Now we divide normally. 8 does not go into 1, but 8 will fit into 14 one time. When you subtract 8 from 14, you will get 6. and bring down the next digit. 4, don't worry about the decimal. You've already taken care of it. It's already here above the line where it needs to be. And 8 goes into 64 exactly 8 times. 1.8, final answer. All right. So when you have a decimal already inside of the division bar, you're going to bring it above the line. Okay. So you try 6.3 divided by 7. 6.3 divided by 7. Your turn, go. All right, on the count of 3, show me your answers. Ready? 1, 2, 3, show me. Yes. Ooh, good, 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 good. I love it. I saw the first thing you do is move the decimal. Okay, there's no decimal on the outside, so you take this decimal, pull it straight up, keep your place values the same. I saw a lot of people say 7 doesn't go into 6 at all, but 7 goes into 63 9 times. 0.9 or 0.9 is your final answer. All right, let's do some more. Do a couple more. How about 137.5 divided by 5? All right, I see a few whiteboards ready. On Zachariah's case, some paper and pencil, that's fine too. Okay, as long as you show me an answer. Haha, Liliana, I see your face and your board. That's helpful. Thank you, Bella. See yours too. Remington's all ready. All right, let's see it. 1, 2, 3, show me. Show me those answers. Aha. Yep, yep, yep. I see some good answers. Oh, place values. Oh, place values. That's the most important thing. Like Bella, you have a number above the 1 and the 3, and then you put a decimal right above the 7. So it's just a little bit out of whack. And I'll show you a way that you can help correct that. I'm going to do this on paper and with pencil so you can hopefully see it and lined up a little bit better. Let's zoom way in here. All right. If you turn paper sideways, and this might help you avoid that mistake. If you put 1 digit in each column of your lines here, 137 point, but the decimal point goes right on that blue line, 0.5. So that decimal point is on the line, so you know where it is. There's no decimals on the outside. Pull that decimal right above the line on the inside. And then 5 does not go into 1. There's nothing there. 5 goes into 13 twice. See how the columns line up here? The 2 goes above the 3. 2 times 3 is 10. Bring down that 3 and the 7. Okay, 5 goes into 37 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. When you subtract You have 2 left over and you bring down the 5. 5 goes into 25 now 5 times, and the 5 goes over the 5. So making sure those numbers are lined up is so very important. That's that attention to precision, making sure that you are precise with your columns and your answers. Okay. So 27.5 was the final answer. I saw a couple people that put the decimal between the 2 and the 7. However, if you attend to precision, make sure all those numbers are lined up perfectly. Yes, I am very much a stickler on writing nice and neat and making sure that you have those columns in a nice neat row, or in a nice neat column. Those columns are good. I want the columns to be good. All right, next question. We are going to continue a couple more of these just to make sure you're attending to precision. Well, no, actually, you know what? I'm going to skip out here because someone had asked me, said, well, if you have a decimal on the inside and a decimal on the outside, what happens then? What happens if you have a decimal on the inside and a decimal on the outside? Well, you want to work with whole numbers on the outside. So my rule for dividing decimals is move it. You got to move it, move it. You got to move it, move it. All right, on the outside, if you want to make 0.8 a whole number, you would multiply that by 10. So multiply by 10 to give you 8 as a whole number. And on the inside, since you multiplied the outside by 10, you would multiply the inside by 10 also, giving you the number 64. Okay, so if you have 0.8 and you want to divide it into 6.4, you're actually saying, how many times does 8 go into 64? And 8 goes into 64 exactly 8 times. And that's what moving the decimal is all about. It's making sure you have a whole number on the outside and then moving the decimal on the inside. So if I move the decimal once on the outside, I would move the decimal once on the inside, and then you do like we just did. You pull it above the line, and then you continue division. Now 8 goes into 64 8 times. It doesn't fit into the 6, but it does go into 64. So you have 8 times. All right. Let's look at, let's look at another one like this. How about 0.243, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw the other 0 in just to let you know there's another 0 out there, times divided by 0.6. Okay, I'm going to show you again. The rule on the outside is you want to divide by a whole number. So to make 0.6 a whole number, you're going to multiply it by 10, or just move that decimal one time to the right because you multiply by 10. You always do the same thing to the inside as you do the outside. So if you have a decimal on the inside, we moved it once here, so we're just going to move it once here. Now we have 2.430. And I would normally ask you to go ahead and rewrite that problem so it's not so messy and you don't get your decimals confused. If you have 6 and you're dividing it into, you don't need the 0 anymore because 2 is my first digit, decimal 430. Now you have a whole number on the outside, a decimal on the inside. So you can simply pull the decimal above the line and finish your division problem. Go ahead and finish this division problem on your whiteboards. Okay, I'll give you another minute to minute and a half to solve this problem on your whiteboards, please. I know, stay with me. It's been about 30 minutes and I'm getting close. We're almost finished. All right, Liliana's ready. Thank you for your patience, Liliana. Yep, Maria's ready. Kaya, thank you. Oh, I see lots of people here. Rosie, Michael, Liliana, Aubrey. All right, here we go. So once again, practicing that division. Let's see what your answers are. 1, 2, 3, show me. All right. Oh, yeah, I see some digits up front. See some digits in the back. There you go. Oh, forgot the decimal. Don't forget the decimal point. The decimal point's the most important thing. Drake, I think we're going to practice a little more division with you there, buddy. Close. For a placeholder. Carly, you forgot a placeholder. And I will solve this one with you because 6 does not go into 2. You have a decimal. So I'm just going to put nothing in front of the decimal. 6 goes into 24 4 times. 4 times 6 is indeed 24. There's nothing there. When you pull down that 3, 6 does not go into 3. So what are you going to put above the 3? Yes, a 0. It's got to be a placeholder. You got a 0. And on top of the 3, you have to have that placeholder before you can bring down your last 0. Now 6 goes into 30 5 times. So 6 times 5 is 30. So placeholders, that's why I say write zeros above. 0 is fine, even in front of your number. A 0 can still mean nothing. Okay, and we'll get into more of that as we continue with division and learning about those zeros, which ones are important and which ones are not. All right. Oh boy, howdy. I have showed you today a few little tips and tricks about dividing with decimals. If you have just a decimal inside, pull it above the division bar and divide normally. If you have 2 decimals, if you have a decimal on the outside, you got to move it, make it a whole number. And I am just going to assign you a couple of problems to practice this tonight on Khan Academy. Those are going to be up here shortly. I just need about 1 minute to actually go in and assign that. And you will have some practice. I know yesterday I put on a video just to help you get familiar again, I guess, with the problems that I gave you. I'm just curious how many people watched the video, maybe got something more out of it. And okay, here we go, dividing decimals. I'm only giving a few.
Go ahead and get today's lesson started. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it in the chat. Today's code is QTEOH. QTE, excuse me, OH. So if you can see the screen and see the code, go ahead and once again joinpd.com, and your code is listed there on the screen. So today we're going to get back to discussing the organization. We're going to do something a little different today. You're going to be doing most of the work today. So we're going to be reviewing a little bit about the importance of organization in your writing. And then I am going to show you a student essay, and you are going to take a look and tell me what's wrong. So we're going to do just a brief review of what we've gone over the past few days. And then you are going to put your brains to work. Okay, take another 30 seconds here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, my goal is to get to 100 here in about another 15 seconds. We are at 80. Once again, just go to joinpd.com. Code is on the screen, QTEOH. Okay. Not quite at 90. All right, getting there, getting there. Okay, let's get started. So we are still talking about organization. And organization is really, again, when we talk about writing, we tend to think of writing as a very creative endeavor and much more art than science. But actually, there's a lot more science to writing than there is art. The art is sort of where the magic happens. But really, in order for that to occur, you really have to have an idea of how to organize your writing. And that's what we've been talking about. So one thing I want to discuss here, question for you, real quick question. Organizing your thoughts by category is an important part of the writing process. True or false? Organizing your thoughts by category is an important part of the writing process. True or false? Okay. Another 5 seconds. Yes, it is true. Organizing your thoughts by category is very important. We talked about that yesterday, and actually over the previous days. So this is what we did. We had this sample report on rabbits. So over here on the right-hand side, we have all of these facts that we accumulated about rabbits. And so then the question became, okay, well, what do we do with all these facts? If we had to organize these and put them in some type of report, some type of writing, how would we do that? Probably one of the easiest ways, and of course there's all kinds of ways to do that, just simply to make a tree map. So we have the rabbits or rabbit up here, and then I looked at all of these facts and then tried to come up with categories. So habitat, which is where someone or something lives. Diet, okay, what rabbits eat. The scientific classifications, so what are they? Are they mammals? Are they, what's the kingdom? What's the phyla? What's the, and you'll get into that later. And then of course, just the basic physical characteristics. Rabbits have whiskers. They, let's see, the hind leg, they have powerful hind legs. They have very long ears. Those are all examples of physical characteristics. So the idea is to take all of these random facts that we sort of pulled from whatever book or essay or video, and then we have to arrange them in ways that make sense to the reader. So this whole process does one of two things. Number one, it helps the writer keep things straight. So as we're writing all of this information, we're writing it in a sequential way, in a way that makes sense. And obviously the second is, if you're organized and you have your act together as a writer, it's going to make the reading of your essay or whatever it is you're writing way more fruitful and enjoyable for the reader. So twofold, it helps you as a writer, and it certainly helps the reader. So that's what we did yesterday. We took all of these facts and then we just grouped them by category. So right now, I need your help. I am going to show you an example of a student essay. So now you guys get to play teacher. So I'm going to show you this essay. I'm going to give you probably the better part of 5 minutes to read it. Actually, I'll give you 7 minutes. So 7 minutes to read it. And then I want you to list 3 things that need fixing. Okay? And I'll help you out here. So here is the essay. So I'll tell you, I see this all the time. In teachers, I know you do too. Just looking at this, what's the problem? What's the problem? Just looking at this.
No paragraphs, no structure.
No paragraphs. Yes, it drives me crazy. Like, students want to complain all the time. Sorry, guys, I'm going to put you on blast for just a minute. Like, I just don't want to have to do this or whatever. You know what? You have to write 1. We have to grade 34 if we're lucky. So the importance of paragraphs here. If you had to look at this paper, let's be honest, if you had to look at this and you were a teacher or you were an editor and you had to look at this, just looking at this giant wall of text, you just instantly, your eyes roll into the back of your head. So number 1 is paragraphs. So first of all, there's the visual part of it. Like giving paragraphs, it's sort of like short chapters in a book. Like if you've got a short chapter in a book, you just feel like, oh, okay, well, I can get through this chapter. There's only a couple of pages. It's the same way with paragraphs in an essay. If it's broken into smaller parts, it just makes it way more readable. And just visually, paragraphs on a page do something to your brain. And so there's not only the visual aspect of it, but then there's also just the practical organizational part of it, which is, you know, that each one of those paragraphs is going to have a main idea or like a topic of some kind. And then you're just going to make sure that all those supporting details, everything that relates to that topic in that paragraph, you've got them all arranged together. So there's the visual component to it for the reader, but then there's also the practical component for you as a writer, which that's your cue. Oh, okay, this paragraph is about habitat. So I need to talk about where beavers live. This paragraph is about physical characteristics. So this is what they look like. You know, this is their diet. This is what these are the things that they eat. So again, there's the practical. You don't want to exhaust your reader before they even start reading. And then there's just the practical part of, okay, I'm going to arrange all of my facts by paragraph, by topic. Okay. So I want you to read this over. I've already given you one and you can use that. But what are 3 things that need fixing in this paragraph? And I'll give you 5 minutes. So we know one thing is that we are missing paragraphs. We know that. As you're reading this particular essay, see if you can spot a topic sentence of some kind, or a thesis, like a thesis statement. What is this overall? What is this essay? What is this essay about? So is there one sentence that we could narrow down and say, yeah, that's our thesis statement. That's what this essay is about. Okay, got one minute remaining. 1 minute. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing here momentarily. And I want to read some of the responses. The session is still going, so if you're still typing your response, that's fine. So here are some things that people have said. There are no paragraphs. Good, that's one. They didn't indent at the beginning. That's certainly another. And they didn't have an introduction. They just went right into the facts. Okay, perfect. You need paragraphs. It's a giant paragraph. Yes. No topic or thesis statement or sentence. I agree. There are some topic sentences. I think that there are some categories in there. They're just buried. They're really hard to find. And the structure is, quite a few of you said no organization, and I agree. It's all over the place. Number one, no paragraphs, correct. Two, no good topic sentence. I think there's some good topic sentences, but there isn't a thesis statement. So we know that beavers is the, that's what we're talking about, but there isn't really a clear topic sentence. I would agree with that. No indents, no topic, no title. Yep. No paragraphs, no indentation. Sentences are short. Sentences being short is not necessarily a problem. Whenever you are writing a sentence, and this is a very key thing, if you understand this thing, like strong verbs is a big one. And the other one is one idea per sentence. If you start throwing 2, 3 ideas, or you start trying to stack a single sentence with 2 or 3 ideas, it's not going to end well. So one of my writing rules is just one idea per sentence. If you stick to that, you'll be okay. Yep, no paragraphs. There's punctuation, it's punctuated, but there's no real topic sentence. It doesn't give us the big idea of what this essay is about. Okay? It's super long and boring. The whole thing is just facts. this happens, then this, then that. Yeah, I would say, and that's where you come in as a writer. It's sort of like, if you're given that, how do you tune that up? How do you make it more readable, more enjoyable for the writer, or I'm sorry, for the reader, excuse me. Okay.
I need you to log in, CBSWN, okay, for our reading lesson. I'll wait till we have a number of students there. Wow. We're still short about 50 students, so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to start my class and the lesson, and hopefully they'll join us fairly shortly.
Yeah, let's go, guys. This is not optional. I know some of you may be coming back from break, but it's not get on the pair deck if you want. We've got 129 participants in this room. When we start a presentation, we should have 129 people in the room.
Okay, guys, what I'm going to talk to you today is something that's very, very basic to reading, and it's making connections. Good readers don't even think about this. I could almost make this one of the habits of effective readers, but it's not even a habit. It's just the way that they think. And it's very, very basic. It's fundamental to reading or to comprehension, which is understanding what we read. And so I want to talk about connections, okay? Good readers read and they make connections and they do it all the time. Here's some quotes, and I'm only going to read two of these, but I think this first one is really enlightening. Any fact becomes important when it's connected to another. That's right. You get a fact all by itself, it doesn't mean much. But when you start connecting it to other facts, facts that you know, or facts that someone, maybe the world knows, or that you've experienced, then it becomes important. And then down at the very, very bottom, John Muir, who is a man actually from California, he actually lived not very far from here, at the end of his life. And he said this, he said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find that it's hitched to everything else in the universe. And what he was meaning is that everything is connected to everything eventually, okay? People are connected to people. Science, biology is connected to physics. We all have this different areas of learning and knowledge which we have, but it's all related to each other and it's all connected. And when we read, we have a tendency to connect in three ways. We will connect to the text. In other words, I'll be reading, I'll say, oh, I've read something like this before. And I'll think of something that I've read, and another book, another article, something that my teacher or my grade, as a part of sixth grade, I've had to read. And then sometimes we relate it to the world. It's something out there. It's something which that's around us. It's a part of our environment. It's a part of what we've experienced of the world. And sometimes we make connections within ourselves. Okay, I felt like that. One of the books that we read typically in sixth grade is Walk Two Moons. And it's a story of a young girl who is missing her mother. And you just go through this all through the book. You just make the connections. I know how she's feeling. I know how she's feeling. I experienced that, okay? Well, let's make some connections today. Let's just practice and see how this works. See, we read and make connections, but connections is about remembering. And what we remember is what we connect to, right? So what's your earliest memory you ever have of your whole life? Get it in your head. What's the earliest memory you can think of? I'll bet there is some strong emotion attached to it, okay? For instance, it might have been a happy experience. Maybe it was a birthday party when you were 2 or 3 or 4. Maybe it was an experience of grief where maybe someone you cared for very, very deeply had passed on. Or maybe it was regret, something you did and you felt so much shame and you were sorry for it. But you see, it's those emotions that attach to the memory that helps us remember them. It's a connection. We need our connections if we're going to learn. Okay, I want you to look at this number over on the right. I want to show you, we're going to do a kind of an experiment, and I want you to remember this number, 362-751009. I'll say it again, 362-751009. See, remembering is key to learning, and making connections is the first step to remembering. So if you're going to remember this number, you better make a connection with it. One more time, 362-751009. Okay? Now, like I said, remembering is key to learning. Making connections is the first step to remembering. Now, I also want you to remember this story. This is a real short story. Mr. Mullen first saw Mrs. Mullen when she was playing volleyball. She served the ball and his heart was captured. Okay? Mr. Mullen first saw Mrs. Mullen when she was playing volleyball. She served the ball and his heart was captured. Now, we'll come back to these two things in a little bit, and just to prove a point, this experiment that we're doing. But so put those two things which we're supposed to remember, put them off to the side, and then let's look at this. The Dog by Ogden Nash. The truth I do not stretch or shove. When I state that the dog is full of love, I've also found by actual test a wet dog is lovingest. Okay? Ogden Nash is a famous poet. He kind of writes these cute and funny, humorous little verses. Now, I want you to make a connection with this. You understand what Ogden Nash is saying? What he's getting at? What does this poem remind you of? Now, down at the bottom, I want you to write your response. And in a minute, I'm going to give you about a minute to write down what this poem reminds you of, and we're going to make a connection. So go ahead and do that now. In a minute, we'll share responses. About another 20 seconds. Well, let's look at the responses now. Reminded me of my dog. Reminded me of my late dog, Candy, who loved baths so much that she would actually give you kisses if you said bath. Oh, that's wonderful. This poem reminds me of when I watched the Dodo, and there was a dog that looked like the dog in the picture. Okay. This dog reminds me of my dog. She's black and white, she's tiny, and she's caring, loving, and playful. She always licks me. This poem reminds me of my dog that passed away, my little puppy Luke. It reminds me of how crazy my dog gets when he's wet. It reminds me when I had my first best dog. It reminds me of my cat. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, right? Because that's your pet. Reminds me of a wet dog shaking off water and spraying someone. Oh, that's good. That's a good connection. Now, do you notice a pattern in how we remember these? My dog, when I was 5, I had a dog. Poem reminds me of my neighbor, Nicky. First brought over his new husky puppy. Reminds me of Mrs. Bragg's poetry class. There's another connection I hadn't thought of before. The vast majority of us, though, are making connections with what we have experienced and what we have felt in having puppies or having a pet, the love and the joy that they bring to me. Do you notice that there's an emotion that it was captured in many of our connections? Because emotions are powerful and they help us remember. Let's make a connection. Most of us, I just said this, most of us made a connection with ourselves when we talked about a pet. So let's read the following and then let's make a connection. This one's a little bit different. The Eiffel Tower was built by Gustave Eiffel for the 100th year anniversary of the French Revolution. There were 107 bids submitted to construct the Eiffel Tower. 50 people worked on the design and more than 100 built the parts. 132 workers assembled the parts on site. At first, the Eiffel Tower was to be made in Barcelona, Spain, but the people of Barcelona did not want it. Construction began on January 28, 1887, and was concluded on March 31st, 1889. Now look at the picture. That may look familiar. See? Sometimes we can make connections through pictures and the text. When the tower was built, it was only meant to be kept for 20 years. People did not like the Eiffel Tower and reckoned they wanted it taken down. After the 20 years, the tower became the property of Paris again. By this time, the city had learned that the tower could be used to help with communications. The military used the tower to communicate during battle. The tower was used in the capture of the spy, Mata Hari. Nobody wanted it to be taken apart. So let's make a connection right here, okay? I want you to go down below and I want you to tell me of something that this reminds you of, or some thought or some knowledge that is stirred up in your mind, some remembrance, and I want you to write it down. Go ahead. I'm going to give you a minute to write down your response. Okay, I'm gonna start sharing. Reminds me of the time I was in San Francisco and was reading a metal plaque that showed how the Golden Gate Bridge was built and what happened during that time. That's a powerful connection. Do you see how it comes out of the life of the person who has just read this article? They're relating something that they have experienced here with something that happened, 5,000 miles away. That's powerful. This reminds me of the time me and my little brother and my little cousin built little boats out of block. Me and my, had a boat war and he almost destroyed everything. It was hilarious. Okay, good. Building. Talks about building the Eiffel Tower. Well, here they built what? Little boats. This reminded me of the fake Eiffel Tower in Vegas that my mom went to go eat at, right? That's right, there is a smaller version of the Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas that's fun to go look at. It's actually fairly large, but compared to the one in Paris, it's very small. My grandma gave me an Eiffel Tower poster. You're making a connection. I remember how when I was 6, I wanted to go to Paris for my 10th birthday. I ended up having a party. Yeah, me too. It reminds me of one time my sister accidentally hit me in the face with a toy Eiffel Tower, so I accidentally went psycho and attacked her. See, we're making connections, and all these connections come out of our life, or they come out of the world at large. We saw something here, we relate it to something there, or, it comes out of something we've read. Croissants and weird painter hats. I think I know who wrote that one. I think of Conan Gray. He posted something about wanting to build a rocket, fight a mummy, or climb the Eiffel Tower. The connection I can make is how when battles were happening is that there is some kind of communication when the battles are happening, okay? See, we're all making connections from something that we know, or we have learned before, or we have experienced, or we have attached some emotion to. Okay? Cool. So this one right here, if we were to say it, what was most of the connections in this one were kind of all over the place, but I hope that you saw that many of the connections were something that they knew or they had experienced out in the world. Well, let's do another connection. This is from a famous story written by a famous author. His name's Langston Hughes. He's a great author. You should read him. And he writes this, this is just a selection, a small sliver of a short story. And this is what he wrote. She was a large woman with a large purse that had everything in it but a hammer and nails. It had a long strap, and she carried it slung across her shoulder. It was when a boy ran up behind her and tried to snatch her purse. The strap broke with a single tug. The combined caused him to lose his balance, so instead of taking off full blast as he had hoped, the boy fell on his back on the sidewalk, and his legs flew up. The large woman simply turned around and kicked him right square in his blue jeans sitter. When she reached down, picked up the boy by his shirt front and shook him until his teeth rattled. After that, the woman said, "Pick up my pocketbook, boy, and give it here." She still held him, but she bent down enough to permit him to stoop and pick up her purse. Then she said, "Ain't you ashamed of yourself?" Now, I want you to write down below the connection you make with this story. Now remember, sometimes pictures help us make a connection. But this story, this little small sliver from the story by Langston Hughes, is full of places where we can make connections. Let's see where we do. Go ahead, write your responses now. I'll give you 1 minute. Well, let's begin looking at the responses. Connection reminds me of when someone barged in my house and knocked my dogs. Reminds me of kids not having enough money and needing to steal for food and other necessities. Okay? What connection I make is all the robbery you see in movies or TV shows, and how the picture in my head is showing black and white, so back in the 80s. Okay? Oh, okay, good. I'm sorry. This reminds me of a strict grandma. I don't know why. Laugh out loud. This reminds me of violence and when colored people were beat and not treated right. Okay? When I ran into a lady and I forgot to say sorry. Okay? We're making a lot of personal connections on this. Reminds me of the time when I tried to steal some candy from my parents' room. My dad caught me and started saying this long speech why stealing is bad and that candy can give you diabetes. This reminds me of the time I stepped on my grandma's ankle and she almost took my arm off. I'm enjoying this. Oh, it's interesting. It reminds me of old days when there were no equal rights. My brother, when he was 13, threw a ball and he accidentally threw it at our neighbor's window, and my mom came out and our neighbor ran up to him and said, "Boy, you're paying for it." Yeah, that's a real similar story, isn't it, Josie? That's good. I'm glad you shared that with us. Connection I make with this story is that I read the whole story, short story at my old school. You might have read this story before. I've seen it once or twice in curriculum, so you might have. When my cousin Caleb got in trouble, my uncle got my grandma and spanked him with her sandal. Okay. Good. So many of the responses that we got were you making connections in your own life with this little story. Let's make one more connection. This is an interview with J.K. Rowling. You probably know who J.K. Rowling is. That's her on the right. She's the one who wrote the books, all the Harry Potter books, and was really the inspiration for the movies. So let's read this. You'll notice that the bold print, this is formatted a little differently. The bold print are the questions or the interviewer, and the plain text is her answers. Did you make up the plot and every aspect first by charting the characters and knowing exactly what you do with them? Or did you just piece a lot of it together as you wrote? I always have a basic plot outline, but I like to leave some things to be decided while I write. It's more fun. Do you now, or have you in the past, kept a journal? If so, do you believe that it helps in your writing? I've never managed to keep a journal longer than 2 weeks. I get bored with my life. I prefer inventing things. What do you think has been your greatest experience because of Harry Potter's success? The Last American Tour? Because for the first time I realized how many children love Harry. It was a moving experience for me. What makes some witches, wizards become ghosts after they die and some not? You don't really find that out until book 7, but I can say that the happiest people do not become ghosts. As you might guess, Moaning Myrtle. How long have you been writing? As far back as I can remember. The first story I finished was when I was 6 years old. Okay, what connection can you make with this interview? Go ahead and write it below. Okay, let's look at our responses. My connection is that when I used to be little, I used to be scared about Harry Potter. Okay? This reminds me when I had dance auditions and they asked me questions. Then the next day I realized that I made dance competition team succeeded. Reminds me when I had to do an interview. Harry Potter reminds me of the books Percy Jackson. Now this is interesting because here a person is making a connection to books that they have read or books that they know about or books that they have experienced in some way. Harry Potter reminds me of Percy Jackson, both because they are from the same genre. Remember that word? Genre, a type of book, a type of literature. Some of you have read the Harry Potter books. I'm currently writing my own book for myself to read, not anybody else, but I really enjoy writing it. That's cool. I also like to write stories. So these two people are making connections within themselves, okay? Now, the most natural way to make a connection with this interview would be if you had read or if you had experienced something of the books. You would have made a connection through the text, okay? Through your reading, through your learning, okay? So we make connections within ourselves, we make connections through our experience with the world, and we make our connections with the text. All of them are legitimate and powerful and help us learn. Well, let's come to the last one. Okay, do you remember the number? Just say it out loud or write it down. Can you remember the story? Now, which one is easier? I think for the vast majority of us, the story is going to be easier to remember. Why? Because we have no connection to the number, just a rambling set of digits put together one after the other. They have no meaning for us. We don't have connection. But the story, you know Mr. Mullen, and you know Mrs. Mullen, and this is a story about how they came together. And so there's a little bit of a connection you can make just because you know me, okay? See, that's how learning works, that's how memory works, and that's why we need connections as we read. As we work through our readings this semester, this year, you're going to hear me ask you, what connection can you make? And we do that all the time, but what I'm prompting you to do is think a little deeper about the connections, to attach it to something you already know in order that you may use it further in your learning and that you might remember it as we go on. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you for a second. And I shouldn't have done what I did. Let's see.